Okay, now Ahab. Ahab is one of the big guys in the Old Testament as far as kings, but his father was a guy named Omri, and Omri is actually more famous outside the Bible than is Ahab. Omri, you know, when we talk about Alexander the Great, is Philip of Macedon really important? Yes. Okay, Alexander is a great guy, but his father, Philip of Macedon. This is kind of what, in an evil way, this is the kind of what's going on here. Ahab is a big guy, but his father, Omri, his father moved the capital. Now, if you guys are Israel, the capital of Israel was where William is here, and then over where Zach is more where Samaria is. Now, why would you move the capital from where William is over to where Zach is? Where is the major road? If you guys are the Mediterranean Sea, is there the major Route 95 coming up right here? So if you move the capital over here, you can now control the what? The major highway, the coastal highway that runs out over the coast by the Philistines. You can control that if you're here. If you're back up in the mountains where William is, I mean, you're back up in the mountains. You know, you can't control that stuff. So was that a brilliant move by Omri to move the capital out by overlooking the coastal plain? It was a brilliant move. Okay, so they move it to Samaria, so now Samaria will be the capital. That was a brilliant move by Omri. The Mesha stone and the Moabite stone are two ancient stones that archaeologists have dug up, and they have the name Omri on them. So he was actually, carved into stone, his name Omri, dating from about 830 BC. So we have confirmation of all this stuff, archaeological. By the way, nobody argues with this. No, but you can't argue with it. This is like chiseled in stone, okay? So they've got it. It's interesting, too, this guy Tiglath-Pileser, and I don't care that you know his name, call him Tiggy for short, but anyways, Tiglath-Pileser, in his annals in Assyria, about 100 years later, mentioned Israel as the house of Omri. So even 100 years later, Israel was known as the house of Omri by Assyria. So Omri was the big guy. Ahab was his son. So Omri is internationally known. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Omri was internationally known. Ahab is going to be more big in the Bible. Now, Omri's son Ahab marries this wonderful woman named Jezebel. Even to say her name, is her name Jezebel today? If you call a woman Jezebel, is that? I dare you. Anyways, if I were to call my wife Jezebel, that would be like the worst, okay? There are other politicians that I've heard call that too, anyways, but we'll get out of there. Ahab marries a Jezebel. Jezebel was from Lebanon. She was from Phoenicia. She was from north of Israel, Lebanon, just north. And therefore, because she was from up there, what kind of god did she worship? She was a Baal worshiper. That was in Lebanon. That's where Baal was from. Lebanon area, Phoenicia and stuff. So what Jezebel does is Jezebel brings Baal worship into Israel. From Phoenicia, she brings Baal worship into Israel. Now Baal, there's some things you shouldn't probably know about Baal, but I've had the unfortunate privilege of reading Ugaritic, and I had to read all these Baal myths. The Bible doesn't tell us too much about Baal. That's the honest truth. The Bible doesn't tell us that much about Baal. But they found a place in Ugarit with about 12,000 tablets just north, actually just from her home up in Lebanon, in Ugarit, and they found 12,000 tablets that got like, I don't know how many, there's these tales, these myths of Baal. And so here's Baal's myth, basically. Baal was a storm god. And basically, Baal was considered a rider of the clouds. And Baal was a rider of the clouds. By the way, it's kind of interesting. The Bible in Psalm 68 says Baal is not the rider of the clouds. Psalm 68 says Jehovah is the rider of the clouds. So there's apparently, even in the Psalms, there's some back and forth between. Anyways, so Baal's the rider of the clouds. Baal then reigns on the earth, Mother Earth. When Baal reigns on the earth, he's really fertilizing Mother Earth. Do you get the imagery? Yes, it is that imagery. Okay, it is gross, okay? Now, question. When you went into Baal worship, what happened? When you went into Baal worship, they had the priestess there, and you as a male would go in there, and basically, if she conceived and had a child, that meant, if she was fertile, that meant your land would be fertile. Do you see what part of their worship was? Part of their worship was to go into these temple prostitutes and get them pregnant, because that meant that your land would be fertile. If she was fertile, your land would be fertile. Now, by the way, is this really corrupt? I mean, is this corrupt? I should say, even for San Francisco, is this corrupt? Okay, yes, okay, this is like really majorly corrupt. It was part of their worship, and God hated it. It was really wicked stuff. And Jezebel's promoting this kind of stuff. So, and we know a whole lot about it now, actually. To be honest with you, I know too much about it.